Shake allows you a high degree of control over the caching process by allowing you to insert cache nodes into your node tree. The time to do this is when you have a branch of your node tree that's stabilized, so you can lock that off, put in a cache node, and make changes from there on down. This allows you a more efficient workflow and speeds up your processing time. Let's see how it works. We're going to load a script, so click on the Load button, go to the pop-up menu, down to the Favorites, let go on your exercise files, go to Chapter 10, double-click, Shake Script 02, double-click. And it loads in a script very much like Shake Script 1. Our swinging maiden is 512 by 389, and there's only 10 of them in this clip. We'll add a frame number. We're also going to be scaling it up to 4K resolution as before. If your workstation is not as fast, you might want to lower the number to 4 or 6. Double-click on the blur operation. We've got a blur of 1 to further bog down the processing because we want to load down the machine so we can see the caching in action. The next node resizes the image down to 1K resolution. We'll fit that to the viewer. And this is what we're going to cache to disk. So with the 1K node selected, go to the other tab, to the cache icon, click on that. That inserts a cache node into the node tree. Now let's watch the 4K render time. We come down to our playhead, click on that, and it has to load every frame, up-res it to 4K, do the blur, down to 1K, and write it to disk. So you see how long the 4K compute time is. Now it's just pulling the 1Ks off the disk, all done. It's much faster. We'll stop that. Go to frame 1. Next, I'd like to show you how to pre-render the cache node. To do that, we're going to have to trick Shake into uncaching everything by setting the blur operation to 2. This means that this chain is now invalid, and that means Shake has to recache the new rendered image with a blur radius of 2. To render the cache node, make sure it's selected, come up to the menu bar, to the Render button, click to the pop-up menu, and select Render Cache Nodes. We're going to select just frames 1 through 5. Enter. Okay, click on Render. Shake puts up the render flipbook, and we can see it chugging through the 4K render of the first 5 frames. All done. We'll click that away. Next, we come down here to the 512 resolution. What we're going to do is pull in the rendered 1Ks, frame 1 through 5, res them down to 512, and then print their resolution here. We'll home that. But the first 5 frames are going to come in quick because they're pre-rendered. But frames 6 through 10 are not pre-rendered. So we'll watch Shake slug through rendering those 4K frames again. So watch closely, frame 1 through 5 very quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now it has to go and re-render all those 4K frames, and now it can go very fast. We'll stop, switch back to frame 1, and see what happens when we change parameters above and below the cache node. We'll start by going below the cache node to this resize operation. Click on that parameter. I'm going to change the Y stretch to 400 pixels. Okay, you saw the image move there. Now when I play the shot, Shake has to pull in the pre-rendered 1K cache files, res them to 512 by 400, and then put on the resolution, and this will happen very quickly. So let's watch that. Zing! Very fast. Okay? The reason it went so quickly is all it had to do was pull in the pre-rendered 1K cached images. Now, let's go above the cache node. Let's go to this blur operation. We'll set the blur radius to 3, which forces Shake to recompute everything. Now we'll hit play. We'll see how slow it is. It's chugging through the 4K renders all over again. And once it loops around, it'll start going quickly. There we go. Okay, we'll stop this. Now the interesting thing about Shake's cache is it actually cached the blur of 1 that we did earlier. I'm going to go back and set the blur back to 1. Shake actually remembered the cache where we had the blur set to 1, and it still has it in its cache memory. And I can prove that to you just by hitting play and watch how fast it runs. You see, it's just pulling in the 1Ks. In fact, it remembered the blur of 2 as well. So we'll hit play, and that one comes in fast. So the punchline is, Shake not only caches the images, but it also remembers the state that you had everything in. And if you go back to a previous state, if you still have enough cache memory, they'll be in the cache. Let's go back to frame 1. And now let's take a look at some of the cache node parameters. We can load the cache node parameters into the parameter window simply by clicking on the parameter button like any other node. The first field up here is a read only. You do not get to set this. Shake is reporting where it's pulling the current image from cache. In this case, it's in memory cache. Some other time, it might be pulling it from disk. The force cache option allows you to set whether you want it to use only memory to do the cache, or if you want it to use disk and memory. The image size parameter is Shake reporting the size of the cached image in megabytes. The image size limit is Shake's upper limit for the largest image it can cache in megabytes. Total cache memory is the current setting for your system for how many megabytes in total are allocated for cache memory. Now, right now, the 3.04 megabytes per image is what we're getting because we're using the 1K image. If I plug in the original Swinging Maidens, a little 512, you see the image size has dropped to 0.76 megabytes. However, if I plug in that big 4K image, you see the image size is now 48.6 megabytes, and my size limit is 49. I'm very close to the upper size limit. So let's open this guy up, open up a tweaker window, and I'm going to blow over the top by increasing the scale factor up to 9, and look what happened. My image size is blown up to 54.7 megabytes. I've exceeded my size limit of 49, and the node turned red. This is Shake telling you that the cache node has halted because you've blown over a limit. If you blow over the cache memory limit of 128 megabytes, you will also get the red cache node and a halt to the caching process. In this movie, we saw how to insert cache nodes into a finished part of our node tree so that we could then start working from that point down much more efficiently. We saw the effect of changing nodes both below and above the cache node, and we also saw that surprisingly, Shake caches several versions of our work. And if you go back to a previous version, as long as you had enough cache memory, it remembers those earlier versions. We also saw the cache node parameters has size limits for both the image size and the total cache memory. And if you exceed either of those two parameters, the cache node turns red and the caching process shuts down.